Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today we will discuss following topics. What is the issuing bank and what is the difference between the issuing bank and advising bank? Difference between the open account and cashing advance. Difference between document against payment and document against acceptance. What is the difference between the site LC and usance LC? Usance LC with the deferred payment LC. The difference between documentary collections versus documentary credit, negotiating bank versus confirming bank, red clause LC and green clause LC, import LC, export LC, revocable LC versus irrevocable LC, confirm LC versus unconfirmed, back to back LC versus transfer LC, with recourse LC versus without recourse LC, domestic trade versus international trade. These were the topics which we will discuss in this video. So let's start. Issuing bank. Now we will differentiate both issuing bank and advising bank basis on the payment. As we know that issuing bank is that bank which issues the LC on behalf of its customer, that is applicant. So once the LC is issued by issuing bank, then it is irrevocably bound to honor a compliant presentation made by the exporter. Whenever exporter submits the document at issuing bank counter through his bank, then issuing bank must have to pay or must have to honor that bill if it is a clean bill. Whereas if we talk about advising bank, then that advising bank is that bank which advises the credit, or we can say that bank which advises the LC once is issued by the issuing bank. So advising bank is the beneficiary bank. So it is not bound to honor any payment, right? Whenever the exporter submit document, then exporter submit document to his bank, that is advising bank. Then his bank will only forward such document to issuing bank. So advising bank is not liable for any sort of making payment. Now on the basis of responsibility, issuing bank, what is issuing bank does? Issuing bank just only does to issue the LC, and after issuing the LC, whenever the document reaches his counter, then he will make the payment. So issuing bank is that bank which issues the LC and make the payment whenever the document received at his desk. So advising bank, what advising bank does? It's, as I mentioned, it only advises the LC post checking the authenticity of the credit. Once the LC is issued by issuing bank, so once issuing bank forward that LC to advising bank, then advising bank must aware of that this LC is authenticated. If it is found that this LC is not authenticated, he must not advise that LC. If it is advising, that it is advising at his own risk. So advising bank must have to check the authenticity of the LC. After that, it will must advise that LC to the exporter. Right? Now we will differentiate both basis on the presentation checks. As issuing bank has issued the LC, so once the document reaches at his counter, he has to check the document whether these the document which are submitted by exporter, whether these documents are compliant with the terms and condition of the credit or not. So issuing bank is liable to check the document whether they are compliant with the terms and condition of that letter of credit or not, so that if it is compliant, then it has to make the payment, else it will not make the payment until and unless the document is accepted by the applicant. Now on the other side, advising bank is not obliged to check the presentation. As I mentioned, advising bank just only forward those documents to issuing bank after lodging in their system. So once the document is forwarded, once the document is received by advising bank, it will forward those documents to issuing bank. So it is not liable to check those documents whether it is complying with the terms and condition of that credit or not. So it is the duty of the issuing bank to check the presentation whether it is a clean bill or it is a discrepant bill. So we can say that advising bank is not liable to check the presentation. Now what is the role of issuing bank and what is the role of advising bank? Once the LC is issued, or we can say that in the under LC terms, issuing bank determines and regulates the several parties which are involved in a LC, and it defines the roles of each and every party in a LC. Right? Means that to which bank the credit will be available, or it will be available freely, or it will be restricted, right? Or whether the credit is available by which payment method, whether it is available by sight, whether it is available by acceptance, negotiation, or deferred payment. So the role of issuing bank is to determine and regulate the different parties involved in a letter of credit, right? Whereas if we talk about advising bank, so it basically act as an agent of issuing bank. Why it is acting as an agent of issuing bank? Because in these transactions, advising bank is advising the LC, or we can say that it's forwarding the LC received from issuing bank to the beneficiary. So it is acting as a mediatory, or we can say that acting as a agent of issuing bank to forward that LC to the ultimate supplier, or we can say ultimate beneficiary. So here advising bank act as an agent between issuing bank and the beneficiary, but it can decide whether it has to act as an agent or not, right? Issuing bank is that bank which is normally situated in the country of applicant. इशूइंग बैंक वो होता है जो नॉर्मली एप्लीकेंट जो होता है, इंपोर्टर होता है, उसकी कंट्री में रहता है, राइट? Advising bank, maximum time of scenario, advising bank is that bank which is situated in the country of beneficiary. So we can say that in maximum scenario, advising bank is the beneficiary bank, but it can be a different bank. It can be a different bank, but in maximum scenario, advising bank is the only beneficiary bank. So advising bank is situated in beneficiary country, whereas importer bank, that is issuing bank, it is situated in the country of applicant. One of the most important point which we need to understand and we must know, issuing bank can't be a confirming bank. Why it can't be a confirming bank? Because why there is a role of confirming bank in a LC? Confirming bank role is required when the beneficiary is doubt about the credit worthiness of issuing bank. When it has a doubt about the credit worthiness of issuing bank, so why would it take confirmation from that bank only? And why it would take to pay extra charges for that confirmation? Does it make any sense? No. So because of this, the issuing bank can't be a confirming bank. But AB here stands for advising bank. AB can be a confirming bank. Maximum scenario, whenever the beneficiary having doubt with the credit worthiness of the issuing bank, that what beneficiary ask, the beneficiary asks that please give a confirmation through his bank which is situated in his own country, confirming the letter of credit. So basically advising bank can be a confirming bank, मतलब कि जब भी beneficiary को issuing bank की credit worthiness पर doubt होता है, तो what he is asked that please add a confirmation through his bank. So whenever his bank add a confirmation, then it will be called as a confirming bank. So advising bank can be a confirming bank, but IB can't be a confirming bank. So this point need to be remembered. Now we will differentiate open account payment method and cash in advance. Both open account payment and cash in advance are one of the most important and most widely used payment in international trade transactions, right? Now we will discuss open account payment, aka is stand for also known as, right? Open account payment, we can also call it as direct import payment, whereas cash in advance is also called as advance import payment. Okay, the process is there in open account payment. The process, what actually happens in this, here the exporter ships the goods. In open account payment, exporter ships the goods before receiving the payment from the importer. So once the exporter ships the goods before receiving the payment, so it is one of the most risky type for exporter. Whereas in cash and advance is that payment where the importer has make the payment in advance. Once the importer has make the payment, after that the exporter ship the goods. Right? So now we will discuss the nature of payment. Open account payment, as I mentioned, is also called as direct import payment. It is highly risky for the exporter. Why it is highly risky for the exporter? As I mentioned in the second point, here the exporter ships the goods before receiving the payment from the importer. So the exporter will be in highly risk condition as he's already shipped his good. Might be possible that the importer does not make the payment. So exporter will be in a risk position. Whereas in cash in advance, it's highly risky for the importer. Why? Because importer here is making advance payment against import or import of goods or services from exporter. So importer is making advance, so it is in highly risk, because if importer has made the payment, it might be possible that exporter will not ship the goods, or if it has shipped the goods, might be damaged, there might be a damaged goods might get lost while shipment. So there is a risk. So open account is risky for exporter, whereas cash in advance is risky for importer. Now we will differentiate DP payment and DA payment. Document against payment is DP payment, whereas DA stands for document against acceptance. डीपी पेमेंट को मैं डॉक्यूमेंट अगेंस्ट पेमेंट भी कह सकता हूँ, कैश अगेंस्ट डॉक्यूमेंट भी कह सकता हूँ, कैश ऑन डिलीवरी भी बोल सकता हूँ, साइट पेमेंट भी बोल सकता हूँ. सो these were the multiple names of document against payment or DP. So we need to remember all of these name, as DP stands for D for document, P for payment. So document against payment, right? So it can also be called as cash against document, site payments, or cash on delivery. Whereas DA stands for document against acceptance, which can also be called as term collections or usance payment or acceptance collection. So there were multiple names for both of the terms. So we need to remember all of these terms. Now what happens in document against payment, DP? What is the process flow of the DP or DA? Now we will differentiate basis on this. Process flow of the document against payment is, in document against payment, once the exporter ships the goods, then collecting bank hand over those shipping document to the importer once he has paid the bill. Once exporter has shipped the goods, then he gets the shipping document from shipping company. Then after getting the shipping document from shipping company, then seller or that exporter will submit those documents to his bank, right? Then his bank will forward such document to the importer bank. Once importer bank has received those documents, then that bank can only hand over those documents to importer once he has made the payment or once he has paid the bill. Once the exporter ship the goods and submit those documents to his bank, that is remitting bank, then remitting bank forward those documents to collecting bank. Once the collecting bank has received those documents, then it can only deliver those documents to the importer once he has made the payment. So this is called document against payment. Means डॉक्यूमेंट अगेंस्ट पेमेंट वो होता है कि जब भी एक्सपोर्टर शिपिंग डॉक्यूमेंट अपने बैंक को देता है, रेमिटिंग बैंक को, उसका बैंक रेमिटिंग बैंक कलेक्टिंग बैंक को जब फॉरवर्ड करता है दोज डॉक्यूमेंट, तो कलेक्टिंग बैंक इंपोर्टर को डॉक्यूमेंट तभी रिलीज कर सकता है जब वो पे करे. सो दिस इज कॉल्ड डॉक्यूमेंट अगेंस्ट पेमेंट, यानी कि डॉक्यूमेंट रिलीज होंगे अगेंस्ट पेमेंट. पेमेंट होगा तो डॉक्यूमेंट मिलेगा. दिस इज डॉक्यूमेंट अगेंस्ट पेमेंट. Whereas in DA, what actually happens, whenever the exporter ships the goods, it gets a shipping document from shipping company which he submit with his bank, that is remitting bank. Then that remitting bank will forward those documents to collecting bank. Once the collecting bank has received those documents, then collecting bank will present those documents to the importer for accepting that bill. Here acceptance means that okay, now the collecting bank will release those documents basis on that acceptance, where he confirmed that he will make the payment on a certain due date which is in future dated, or we can say that on a maturity date of that payment terms. Now we will differentiate both basis on the goods status. In DP, exporter keep control over the goods until the importer pays. As I mentioned, in DP, the importer gets the document from his bank, that is from collecting bank, only once he has made the payment. So once he has made the payment, then only he can take the document from his bank. Then once he has take the document from his bank, then he can submit those document to the custom so that he can get the goods released. But if he does not get the document from his bank, then how can he take the delivery of that goods from custom? So it is not possible. No? Whenever he gets the document from his bank, then only basis on those documents he can get the goods clear from custom. So in DP, goods status is in exporter control only until and unless the importer makes the payment and takes the delivery of that goods. Whereas in DA, it's just opposite of the DP, where once the importer has accepted the bill, he can take the document from his bank, collecting bank. After taking document from collecting bank, he can release the document from custom basis on such document. So in DP, once he has made the payment, he can take the delivery of that goods basis on that document which he got from that collecting bank. But in DA, once he accepted the bill, basis on that acceptance, he can take the document from his bank and further it can be released from custom basis on such document. Whereas now we will differentiate both basis on credit facility. In DP, there is no credit extended to importer. Means credit is what? Here is the usance period which is availing. So in DP, as we know that in DP, whenever the document is received at collecting bank counter, then importer has to make the payment on immediate basis. So in that scenario, he is not availing any credit facility. Whereas in DA, he is availing credit facility until the maturity date of that payment terms. Whereas in DA, what the importer is getting, importer is availing credit facility, or we can say that importer is availing usance period for that much of time until unless he make the payment of that bill. Means that in DA what actually happens, once he accepted the bill, he confirmed that he will make the payment in future date. So from today when he accepted the bill and to till that future date, he is availing period. What period? For usance period, or we can say the credit period. He is availing credit period for this much portion of time. So in DA it is availing that credit. After that he will make the payment. But in DP he has to make immediate payment. So here it is not availing any credit facility. Now basis on that payment time, we can say that here importer has to make payment on immediate basis once the document reach collecting bank counter, as I mentioned in my last point. So in payment terms, whenever the document is received in collecting bank counter, he has to make the payment on immediate basis. After that he can only take the document. Whereas in DA, here importer has to make the payment on a future dated. What is that future dated? That is called maturity date or retirement date, we can say that. So on that date, how that retirement date will be calculated? That will be calculated as per the payment terms mentioned in it. It can be a 90 days from that invoice date. It can be a 60 days from bill of lading date. It can be any date. So once the maturity date is calculated basis on that date, he has to make payment on that date. Then that date will be a future dated date only from today, right? This is all about the DA and DP. Now we will differentiate documentary collection and documentary credit. These were the most widely used types of payment in international trade. Now in documentary collection, it can also be called as collections against bill. Document collections को मैं बोल सकता हूँ collection against bills, right? Whereas in documentary collection is also called as letter of credit, or we can say that LC. So documentary credit is also called as LC or letter of credit, whereas documentary collection is called as collection against bills. What actually happens in documentary collections and what actually happens in a documentary credit? What is its process flow? Now we will discuss this. Actually in documentary collection, first of all, there is an agreement happen between seller and importer. After that, the seller will ship the goods. Once the original shipping document he gets from the shipping company, then seller will submit these shipping document to his bank, that is remitting bank. Once the remitting bank has received such document, then remitting bank will forward those documents to collecting bank, right? After that, once the document is received with collecting bank, then collecting bank can only release such document basis on the fulfill of the payment terms. Means that if the document is on DP basis, then import has to make the payment on immediate basis. If the document stating payment terms as DA, then importer has to accept the bill and has to make the payment on future dated, right? So this is the process flow of documentary collection. Now we will discuss the process flow of documentary credit. Documentary credit is, as we know that it is called as LC. Then LC is a undertaking issued by a issuing bank on behalf of its customer, favoring to beneficiary, stating that it guarantees the payment for the goods or services which the importer gets from the exporter, and ensure that the issuing bank will make the payment to the exporter whenever the exporter submit the clean bill, or we can say the exporter submit the acceptable document as stated in the letter of credit. So documentary credit is what? Documentary credit वो होता है कि जिसमें भी जब इंपोर्टर के ब्याह पे उसका बैंक एक एलसी इशू करता है, वो अंडरटेक करता है कि अगर इंपोर्टर पे नहीं करेगा तो मैं उसके ब्याह पे करूँगा टू एक्सपोर्टर, बट where exporter has to submit the specified document which are mentioned in the terms and condition of that credit. If his exporter submit those documents and it is complying with the terms and condition of that credit, then the issuing bank will make the payment. So what's the process flow of the documentary credit? Now we will discuss that. Once the LC is issued by the issuing bank, then the issuing bank will forward that LC to the advising bank. That advising bank is the beneficiary bank in maximum scenario. So that bank will advise that LC to the beneficiary once the LC is issued. So once the LC is advised with the exporter will verify that LC. After that, the exporter will ship the goods and submit document to his bank. His bank forward those documents to our bank, that is to importer bank. Okay, after that importer bank will only release those documents as per the payment terms which are mentioned in the credit. It can be site, it can be acceptance, it can be deferred payment, it can be negotiation. So once the advising bank gets the payment on maturity date from issuing bank, then advising bank will settle the payment in beneficiary account. So here we need to understand two things. One thing is that in documentary collection there are two payment terms, that is document against payment, another is document against acceptance. Whereas in letter of credit there are four types of payment, or we can say that the availability of credit is depend on four methods, that is site, acceptance, deferred payment and negotiation. So in documentary collection there are two payment method, whereas in documentary credit there are four payment method. Now we will differentiate both basis on the charges. Actually, documentary credit is highly costly if we calculate basis on the charges, whereas in documentary collection the charges were low. In documentary collection the charges were generally low because it does not attract any sort of undertaking from either from collecting bank or either from remitting bank. But here the role is of the bank is just to forward the document from exporter bank to importer bank and payment from importer bank to exporter bank. But in documentary collection there is no payment guarantee is issued from any of the bank. But in documentary credit there is a payment undertaking issued by a issuing bank. So this is also one of the most payment undertaking which we have mentioned in our last point as we can see that in payment obligation, right? So in documentary collection it is generally of low charges, or we can say that in documentary collection there are low charges while issuing the documentary collection, whereas in documentary credit the charges were generally high if you compare it to with documentary collection. So in documentary credit, here the charges were calculated basis on the proportion of the value of that LC. The higher the value of LC, the higher the will be charges. The higher the tenor will be, the higher the charges will be. So here the charges depend on the value and the tenor for that LC is issued. So in documentary credit, the charges depend on the value and the tenor of that LC is issued. Whereas in documentary credit, there is a fixed portion of charges which were levied from the exporter, or they were, as we compare, it's generally too low if we compare it with documentary credit. Now we will discuss both. Now who prefer documentary collection and who prefer documentary credit. Documentary collection is generally used when there were both the parties were familiar with each other. When importer knows exporter, exporter knows importer, and they both have trust on them, each other. So there was a less chances of breach of trust. So we can say that in documentary collection, in this payment method, who will prefer that this payment method? The only person will prefer those payment method, documentary collection, whenever both knows each other, or we can say that both trust each other. So that they will prefer documentary collection instead of documentary credit if they want to avoid highly charges. Whereas documentary credit is preferred when there is a risk. That risk can be due to unknown interaction of both the parties. It can be due to country risk. It can due to geographical risk. It can be due to political risk. It can be due to any sort of risk. There are maximum sort of risks which are involved in international trade transaction. So documentary credit is used when both the parties are not familiar with each other and whenever there is a risk in dealing with the party. It can be a country which can be a sanctioned, so there will risk whether the payment he will get from that bank, country or not, from that bank or not. So in documentary credit, when there is a risk, when both are unknown to each other, then both the importer and exporter will prefer to deal with documentary credit. Whereas in documentary collection, when both knows each other and both trust each other, so there is a less chances of breach of trust in this. So we can say that whenever both knows each other, then they will issue documentary collection. When both are unknown to each other, then they will prefer documentary credit. Now we will differentiate both on the basis of payment obligation. Under documentary collection, as I mentioned, neither any bank nor any bank hold any sort of responsibility of guaranteeing payment guarantee. जैसा मैंने बताया डॉक्यूमेंट्री कलेक्शन में कोई भी बैंक गारंटी की कंफर्मेशन नहीं देता है. Here bank does not hold any sort of responsibility of guaranteeing the payment, because in documentary collection the payment and the document routes from bank. only the payment routes from bank and the document routes from bank. But there is no confirmation that the importer will definitely make the payment to the exporter. Whereas in documentary credit, issuing bank is liable to exporter once he has issued that LC. But there is one condition in this, that exporter has to submit the compliant presentation. If he has submitted the discrepant document, then issuing bank is not liable to make the payment until unless the applicant accepts the document. So in LC, issuing bank is liable to make the payment to exporter. Whereas in documentary collection, importer and his bank, collecting bank, is not liable to make the payment, but it can make the payment. Now we will discuss both basis on the cost evaluation. As I mentioned, when the charges in documentary collection are low, then it will be called as a low cost payment method. As here only the lodgement charges only and the payment charges only. No other charges will be debited rather than these charges. So in documentary collection, it will be called as a low cost payment method. If both the parties were doing cost cutting and will prefer for less costly method, then documentary collection is the best method. Whereas we compared with the documentary collection or documentary credit, then it will be called as a highly costly method, as it will attract many sort of charges like issuance charges, advising charges, confirmation charges, retirement charges, payment charging, lodging charges. There were multiple charges which are involved in documentary credit. Whereas in documentary collection, there were low charges. So documentary collection is a low cost payment method, whereas in documentary credit is highly costly method. As I mentioned, there is no payment undertaking given by collecting bank under documentary collection. So it will be highly risk payment method for whom? For the exporter. Whereas in documentary credit, it is the safest method of the LC, as it guarantees the payment to the exporter, but only when he submit the acceptable documentation as stated in the letter of credit. Means whenever the exporter submit the documentation as per the terms and condition of that credit, then importer bank will only make the payment to the exporter in that scenario. So it is safest for both of the parties, whereas documentary collection is highly risky for the exporter. Here in collecting bank is not making any responsibility to make the payment on behalf of the importer if it is failed to make the payment. So it is highly risky for exporter, whereas documentary credit is safest for both the parties. Now, who is the issuing authority in documentary collection and in documentary credit? So in documentary collection, we can say that issuing authority is the exporter's bank, because documentary collection is issued by exporter bank only. Whenever the exporter ships the goods, gets the shipping document from shipping company, then the exporter submit these shipping document to his bank, that is the remitting bank. So remitting bank is the issuing authority under documentary collection. That exporter bank will issue the documentary collection here. Whereas in documentary credit, importer bank is the issuing authority, because here importer's bank issue the LC on behalf of the importer. Here in documentary collection, here the exporter bank issue the collection basis on the exporter. So now we will differentiate import LC with the export LC. Import LC is that LC which is issued by an importer's bank on behalf of the importer against import of any sort of goods or services, is called as import LC. इंपोर्ट एलसी को मैं ये कह सकता हूँ कि इंपोर्टर का बैंक इंपोर्टर के ब्याह पे जब एलसी ओपन करता है, इशू करता है, तो वो होती है इंपोर्ट एलसी। और वही एलसी जब जिसके फेवर में इशू होती है, फॉर दैट इट विल बी कॉल्ड एज एक्सपोर्ट एलसी। एज आई मेंशन्ड इन दैट एक्सपोर्ट एलसी, as it is mentioned, LC is issued by importers bank in favor of beneficiary and his bank is called export LC. That is, import LC issued in favor of exporter, then for the exporter, then it will be called as export LC. राइट मतलब जब भी LC इशू करता है तो जो LC इशू करता है फॉर दैट इट विल बी कॉल्ड एज इम्पोर्ट LC, और जिसके फेवर में LC इशू होती है फॉर दैट इट विल बी कॉल्ड एज एक्सपोर्ट LC. मीन्स whenever the LC is issued by that bank, then that bank is, for that bank it will be called as import LC, and whose favor that import LC is opened, then for that bank is called as export LC. In import LC, if we discuss about then who is the bank customer, as I mentioned, the import LC is issued against the or we can say issued on behalf of the importer. Here the bank customer is also a importer, whereas export LC is issued in favor of exporter. So for in export LC, the bank customer role play is by the exporter only. So in export LC, bank customer is as exporter. In import LC, the bank customer is importer. What is the role of bank customer in import LC? Here bank customer has to make the payment against presentation of bill under that LC. Whenever the exporter submits the document through his bank to the importer bank, so after receiving the document to importer bank counter, the importer has to make the payment based on the payment terms of that LC. So if it is the clean bill, then it has to make the payment. So what is the role of importer in this import LC? So the role of importer under import LC is to make the payment whenever the document is received with his bank. What is the role of exporter in the export LC? The role of exporter under that LC is to ship the goods under that LC and submit those documents to his bank, and after that whenever the importer bank makes the payment, so the exporter will get the payment. So in import LC, the importer has to make the payment whenever the document is received with his bank, whereas in export LC, it will receive the payment from the importer against the shipment of those goods which he has made the payment. Right? Now we will differentiate both basis on the liability. Once the LC is issued, then the liability of issuing bank is created at that time. जिस टाइम भी LC इशू होती है, since that time to till the retirement of that LC or payment of that LC, or we can say that LC cycle is completed, till that time liability of issuing bank is open. Whereas in export LC, the exporter bank does not hold any sort of liability. Right? In import LC, the issuing bank holds the liability till the LC cycle is completed or till the bill is retired. Whereas in export LC, the exporter bank does not hold any sort of liability or no risk in advising that LC. Now we will differentiate nominated bank with the confirming bank. Now what is the nominated bank? What is the confirming bank? Now nominated bank is that bank with which the credit is available. We can say that nominated bank is that bank with which the credit is available. Means नॉमिनेटेड बैंक वो बैंक होता है जिसको इशूइंग बैंक एलसी के अंदर नॉमिनेट करता है कि क्रेडिट विल बी अवेलेबल विद योर बैंक. नाउ व्हाट इज दैट क्रेडिट अवेलेबल? क्रेडिट अवेलेबल मीन्स दैट द पेमेंट और द एलसी इज अवेलेबल बाय व्हाट? एक्सेप्टेंस, साइट, यूजेंस, नेगोशिएशन, व्हाटएवर, डेफर्ड पेमेंट. सो nominated bank is that bank with which the credit is available by site, negotiation, acceptance, deferred, whatever. Whereas confirming bank is that bank which confirms the LC on the request of the issuing bank. So we can say that confirming bank is that bank which confirms the LC to the undertaking of that issuing bank, right? So now we'll start differentiate both basis on the payment liability. In nominated bank, the nominated bank can make the exporter liable. Also, sorry, in the nominated bank may be liable to pay the credit amount only when the nominated bank expects ability to pay the credit amount to the beneficiary. So, payment liability tab in states that in nominated bank, whenever the exporter submits the document to the negotiating bank for negotiation, so the negotiating bank can negotiate the document, can accept the document, can make the payment immediately, can honor that presentation. So it can make the presentation or it can get the payment from that reimbursing bank, and after that it will make the payment. So it depends on the nominated bank whether it will act as a nominating bank to reimburse the exporter, or we can say that nominating bank here may pay the credit amount to the exporter in advance or to accept the draft. Whereas in confirming bank, once it has confirmed the LC, which is issued by issuing bank, it is irrevocable bound to honor the presentation whenever it is made at their counter. So, confirming bank is bound to honor or negotiate the bill whenever the document is submitted at its counter. Once the confirming bank has confirmed the LC, he has to honor the bill whenever the document submitted at its counter. Whereas in nominated bank, the nominated bank may honor that bill or may accept the draft, or he make the payment in advance or make the payment in later basis. Now we will differentiate based on the of payment obligation. If the nominated bank makes the payment to the exporter, then majority time it will be filled with the recourse basis. Now what is recourse basis? Whenever the exporter submits the document to the negotiating bank for negotiation or honor or purchasing, when the nominated bank purchases those documents and makes the payment against those documents to the exporter in advance, then the liability for nominated bank is open. There might be a chance that in future nominating bank will not be able, or issuing bank will not be able to reimburse nominated bank. Might be possible if the issuing bank defaults. So there is a risk for nominated bank. So in recourse basis, the nominating can get the fund back from the exporter to the nominated bank along with interest. So this is called with recourse basis. Means if nominated bank has made the payment to the exporter in advance against the purchase of document, then the nominated bank can claim the fund back from the exporter to the nominated bank along with interest if the bank is failed. But in confirming bank, the same is just reverse of that nominated bank. As confirming bank has confirmed that if the issuing bank fails to make the payment on a due date, then confirming bank will make the payment. So it already taking the responsibility that it will make the payment on behalf of the issuing bank. So the any honor made by a confirming bank is with not recourse basis. Means that any confirming bank has honor any bill, then it will be honor without recourse basis, or we can say that non recourse basis. कंफर्मिंग बैंक जब एलसी कंफर्म करता है तो एक अंडरटेकिंग देता है कि जब भी कोई उसके पास डॉक्यूमेंट प्रेजेंट होगा तो दैट बैंक विल ऑनर दैट प्रेजेंटेशन विद नो रिकोर्स बेसिस. यानी नो रिकोर्स बेसिस मतलब होता है कि वो कभी भी अगर इशूइंग बैंक फेल होकर पे नहीं करता है तो वो एक्सपोर्टर से अपना पैसा वापस नहीं मांग सकता है. बट इन नॉमिनेटेड बैंक इट कैन गेट द मनी बैक फ्रॉम द एक्सपोर्टर अलॉन्ग विद इंटरेस्ट इफ इशूइंग बैंक फेल्स. So it's the difference between nominated bank and the confirming bank. What is the requirement of that nominated bank in LC? Nominated is required when Benny want to get the document negotiated, purchased, or discounted on honor. Means that whenever the exporter wants to get the document negotiated, wants to get the document purchased, wants to discount those documents, wants to get the honor of these documents, so for that there is a role of nominated bank or negotiating bank appears. Means that in nominated bank is required whenever the beneficiary or exporter needs the payment in advance, or we can say that to that nominated bank is required wherever the beneficiary wants to get the document negotiated, purchased, discounted or honor before the payment terms of that LC. Whereas confirming bank is required where the beneficiary is not satisfied with the creditability of that issuing bank. Whenever the exporter having doubt with the creditworthiness or the credibility of that issuing bank, then that exporter will ask issuing bank to get the LC confirmed through his bank, which is situated in his own country. So the role of confirming bank is only required whenever the issuing bank creditworthiness is not too good, or the exporter having doubt on that creditworthiness of that issuing bank. So कंफर्मिंग बैंक का रोल कब होता है या उसकी रिक्वायरमेंट कब आती है एलसी के अंदर, तो तब आती है जब एक्सपोर्टर को इशूइंग बैंक की क्रेडिट वर्थिनेस या उसकी पेमेंट क्षमता पर डाउट हो कि माइट भी वो पेमेंट ना दे ड्यू डेट पे। तो जब भी उसको डाउट रहता है तो कंफर्मिंग बैंक का रोल उसमें प्ले होता है, जब भी वो कंफर्मेशन दिलवाता है एक बैंक से। दैट बैंक विच कंफर्म द एलसी इज कॉल्ड कंफर्मिंग बैंक, whereas nominated bank is required whenever the exporter wants the document negotiated or purchased. Whenever in nominated bank will can make the payment to the beneficiary in advance or can not make the payment. So it depends on the nominated bank. Does it making the payment to the exporter in advance, or it might be possible that it does not make payment to the exporter in advance. So there is a risk that it might make the payment or it might not make the payment. So there is no such sort of confirmation that nominated bank will definitely make the payment. It can make the payment. Whereas in confirming bank, as he has already confirmed the LC, then it is equally liable with the issuing bank undertaking. Means that once the LC is confirmed by the issuing bank, once the LC is confirmed by the confirming bank, then the confirming bank is liable to make the payment whenever the presentation is made at their counter. So here what actually happens, here confirming bank is assuming the same liability of the issuing bank as to with his own, right? So we can say that here confirming bank is assuming same liability as the liability which is assumed by the issuing bank. Now we will differentiate both bases on the presentation counter. In nominated bank, the beneficiary must have to submit the document to the nominated bank if they are nominated bank and confirming bank in the LC. Whereas in confirming bank, that those documents will be forwarded by negotiating bank. So we can say that if there are both the banks, if there is a nominated bank in the LC also, if there is a confirming bank also in that LC, then the documentation should be forwarded by a negotiating bank to the confirming bank. Being first the documentation should be presented to the counter of nominated bank, after that it should be presented to the counter of confirming bank, which is presented by the nominated bank. So this is all about confirm LC and the confirming bank and the nominated bank. Now we will differentiate revocable LC and irrevocable LC. What actually a revocable LC is? As revocable LC is that LC which gives the right to the importer and the right to the issuing bank to cancel the LC or to amend the LC at any point of time without intimating all the parties which are involved in that LC transaction. Means revocable LC is that LC which is giving authority or the right to cancel or amend the LC without intimating or without giving prior notice to the party which are involved in that particular LC transaction. So that is called revocable LC. Whereas irrevocable LC is that LC which can only be cancelled or amended, can only cancel or amend until unless there is a confirmation from all the parties involved in that letter of credit. Means irrevocable LC is that LC which cannot be cancelled or which cannot be amended until and unless there is a consent of the all parties is there. So that is called irrevocable LC. So we can say that in revocable LC there is no payment protection to the seller. If any LC which can be cancelled or amended, so that in that case how the seller will be protected? No, in that case seller will not be protected if any LC get cancelled or amended. So in that case seller will be at a high risk. Whereas in irrevocable LC there is a full protection given to the seller, as it cannot be cancelled or amended until unless the seller provide its consent. So हम कह सकते हैं कि रेवोकेबल एलसी वो एलसी होती है जो इंपोर्टर या इशूइंग बैंक कभी भी कैंसिल या अमेंड कर सकता है विदाउट इन्फॉर्मिंग किसी भी पार्टी को, विदाउट इन्फॉर्मिंग बेनिफिशियरी, विदाउट इन्फॉर्मिंग एडवाइजिंग बैंक और कंफर्मिंग बैंक इफ एनी इज देयर. बट इन इररेवोकेबल एलसी वो ना तो कैंसिल कर सकता है ना ही अमेंड कर सकता है एलसी अनटिल अनलेस सारी पार्टी का जब तक उसमें कंसर्न ना हो. तो जब एलसी कैंसिल नहीं हो सकती है जब तक सारी पार्टी का कंफर्मेशन ना हो, सो इट मीन्स दैट इट इज़ द सेफेस्ट मेथड फॉर एक्सपोर्टर एज वेल एज टू बायर एज वेल. बट इन रेवोकेबल एलसी जब वो कभी भी कैंसिल हो सकता है, अमेंड हो सकता है, तो वो तो सेलर के लिए हाई रिस्क हुआ ना, राइट. Revocable LC is less used type of LC. We can say that as less party will that less number of seller will approach to get the revocable LC issued. Whereas irrevocable LC is one of the largest used type of LC, or we can say the mostly used type of LC. Maximum used type of LC is of irrevocable nature only. Whereas revocable LC is less used, or we can say that it's nil use type of LC, as it does not provide any safety to the exporter. Now one of the most important we must know, the most important point we must know that in revocable LC, if the credit is need to be revocable, then it has to specify in the credit that the subjected letter of credit is subjected to revocable. If the credit is now stating that this credit is subject to revocable terms and condition, then it will be called as irrevocable. मतलब revocable LC वही LC कहलाएगी जब तक वो टाइप ऑफ LC में वो मेंशन ना हो कि दिस LC इज कॉल्ड revocable LC. अगर कोई LC इशू होती है और उसमें वो मेंशन नहीं है कि दिस इज revocable LC, then that will not be called as revocable LC. Then that LC will be called as irrevocable LC. मतलब अगर कोई LC में ये मेंशन नहीं है कि ये revocable LC है, then we will consider it as irrevocable LC. Whereas in irrevocable LC, if that the credit is silent, means that the creditor is not stating that what type of LC is this, then it will be automatically considered as irrevocable as per the article 3 of the UCP 600. मतलब UCP 600 का आर्टिकल नंबर 3 कहता है कि अगर कोई भी LC इशू होती है और उसमें ये मेंशन नहीं है कि दिस LC इज सब्जेक्टेड टू irrevocable टर्म्स एंड कंडीशन, देन इट विल बी कंसिडर्ड एज irrevocable. अगर कोई LC इशू होता है एंड इट इज नॉट मेंशनिंग दैट इट इज सब्जेक्टेड टू irrevocable, then we will automatically consider as irrevocable until unless where it is mentioned that this type of LC is this. So revocable LC has to specific mention that this is revocable LC, else it will consider as irrevocable. Whereas if irrevocable LC is silent, where it does not mention the type of LC is, So then it will be automatically considered as irrevocable as stated in Article 3 of the UCP 600. Now we will discuss confirm LC with the unconfirmed LC. As I mentioned, confirm LC is that LC where the confirmation is added by the confirming bank. So here I can say that in confirm LC there is two layer of payment sureties or two layer of payment protection is there. Means one is the undertaking of issuing bank and second is the undertaking of confirming bank. So here what is here we getting two layer of payment protection. One is from issuing bank, one is from confirming bank. So in confirm LC there is two level of payment surety is there. Whereas in unconfirmed LC there is single layer of payment surety is there, that is only the issuing bank undertaking. अनकन्फर्म LC क्या होता है, वो एक नॉर्मल LC होता है जो ओपन होते हैं, जिस LC में किसी भी कन्फर्मिंग बैंक का कोई कन्फर्मेशन नहीं होता है, दैट इज कॉल्ड कन्फर्मिंग बैंक. मीन्स ए LC which is issued by a issuing bank and there is no undertaking is given by or no confirmation is given by any bank on that, then it will be called as unconfirmed LC. Or we can say the LC where there is no undertaking or confirmation of the confirming bank is called as unconfirmed LC. So in unconfirmed LC there is only single layer of payment protection is there, that is the issuing bank undertaking. Here the issuing bank only undertakes to make the payment. Whereas in confirmed LC there is two layer of protection. One is from issuing bank undertaking and other is confirming bank undertaking. Now we will discuss the level of security. As in confirmed LC there is two layer of payment protection. So it is highly safest, or we can say that highly secure type of LC from exporter point of view. Why it is highly secure from exporter point of view? Because here the exporter gets the payment confirmation from two banks, from issuing bank also, from confirming bank also. So it is highly secure for exporter. Whereas unconfirmed LC is less secure if we compare it with confirmed LC, because here only one layer of payment protection is there, that is the issuing bank undertaking only. Now we will evaluate the cost of both the LC. Whenever there is a confirmation on a LC issued by a issuing bank, then that bank which provides the confirmation that if that bank fails to make the payment, that is the issuing bank fails to make the payment, then confirming bank will make the payment. If that confirming bank is confirming that he will make the payment or it will make the payment on behalf of that issuing bank, then what here is generating his own liability, or we can say that here the liability is created for the confirming bank along with the liability of that issuing bank also. So when the confirming bank is confirming to make the payment, so it will definitely incur a heavy confirmation charges on that LC, because it will confirming the LC payment from the other party, from the issuing bank confirmation. So it will taking the risk of the issuing bank also. So it is one of the costly type of LC where it asks for the confirmation charges, it will ask for the retirement charges. So there were multiple charges involved in the confirmed LC. So it will one of the costly matter. Whereas in unconfirmed LC it is less costly if we compare it with to the confirmed LC. Now what actually a confirmed LC is a LC which where the confirmation is added by the confirming bank to that of issuing bank. Confirmed LC is that LC where the issuing bank requested a bank to add a confirmation on that LC is called as confirmed LC. Whereas unconfirmed LC is that LC where there is no undertaking or no sort of confirmation is added by a confirming bank to that of issuing bank, then it is called as an unconfirmed LC. Now one of the most important point here is that credibility check. In confirmed LC, if any bank is confirming that it will make the payment on behalf of any bank, then it has checked the credibility of that bank. on which behalf it is confirming that it will make the payment. So in confirm LC, what actually happens, the confirming bank, before confirming the LC, it will check the credibility of that issuing bank. After checking the credibility of issuing bank, the confirming bank confirms the LC. If it is having doubt on the credibility of that issuing bank, it will not confirm the LC, or it will deny to confirm the LC. Whereas in unconfirmed LC, there is no need to check the credibility of issuing bank, as the role of confirming bank is not there. अनकन्फर्म एलसी में जब कंफर्मिंग बैंक का रोल ही नहीं है तो क्रेडिबिलिटी वो क्यों चेक करेगा, राइट? इन अनकन्फर्म एलसी, एज वी कैन से दैट there is no role of confirming bank, so why would you check the credibility of issuing bank? Now we will discuss one of the two most used type of LC. One is back to back LC, another one is transfer LC. Now we will differentiate both in easiest way. In back to back LC, we can say that there are two LC issued in back to back LC. If we are talking about the count of LC issued in back-to-back LC, then we can say that in back-to-back LC there were two LC were issued, whereas in transfer LC there is only one LC is issued, right? Now we will differentiate both on security point. As in back-to-back LC, two LC were issued. So in back-to-back LC, the second LC, which is issued as a security of the first LC, whenever second LC is issued basis on the first LC, or we can say that when the second LC is issued being taking the first LC as a collateral security, then that second LC is called as back to back LC. Means पहली LC को गिरवी रखकर कोलेटरल सिक्योरिटी के रूप में लेके जब भी सेकंड एलसी इशू होती है, दैट इज कॉल्ड बैक टू बैक एलसी. मीन्स दैट whenever there is a LC issued, whenever there is a second LC issued basis taking the first LC as a collateral, then that LC is called back to back LC. Whereas in transfer LC, as we know that there is only one LC is issued, so it's a separate credit. A LC which is issued by issuing bank and that same is transferred to the second beneficiary. So what happen is actually so in here there is only a one LC is issued which is further transferred to the second beneficiary. So there is no separate LC is issued. As I mentioned in earlier, there is only one LC is issued. So once the LC is issued by issuing bank, it is transferred to the second beneficiary. Whether it can be transferred wholly or it can be transferred partially. Whereas in back to back LC, second LC issued on the security of first LC is called as back to back LC. Now if a LC is need to be called as back to back LC, then it is not necessary that it has to mention a specific clause in that LC. Means any LC can be called as a back to back LC or can be used as a purpose for a back to back LC. Means that if a LC is issued by issuing bank, then that LC, or we can say that any LC can be used as a purpose of back to back LC. So it is not necessary to mention the specific clause in that LC that this LC is subjected to back clause. No, there is no requirement of such clause. But in transfer LC, there such clause is required where that any LC can only be transferred to second beneficiary if that LC is stating that this credit is transferable. अगर किसी LC में लिखा है कि ये LC ट्रांसफ़र हो सकती है, then only it can be transferred. Otherwise it can't be transferred. Whereas in back to back LC, किसी भी LC को हम back to back LC के बेसिस पे खोल सकते हैं. एक LC इशू हुआ, उसको हम उसके बेसिस पे हम कोई दूसरे LC भी खोल सकते हैं, बैक टू बैक LC खोल सकते हैं. और उसमें ये नेसेसरी नहीं है कि उसमें ये लिखा हो कि दिस LC कैन बी यूज्ड एज purpose of back to back LC. But for transfer LC, it should be mentioned that this is subjected to transferable. Now what is the process flow of back-to-back LC and the process flow of transfer LC? As we know that in back-to-back LC, two credit were issued. First credit is issued by a buyer's bank in favor of agent, or we can say that middleman, or we can say that a mediatory or trader. So first credit is issued by a buyer's bank favoring agent. There are multiple name of agent. Agent can be called as middleman, agent can be called as a trader, it can be called as a mediator. So first credit is issued between buyer to agent, and after that, basis on that first credit, and taking the security of first credit as a collateral, the second credit is issued, and which is issued by an agent favoring to the ultimate supplier, right? So this is the process flow, actually how it happens in back-to-back LC. So in back-to-back LC, we can say that credit 1 is issued by a buyer's bank to the agent, and after that, on the basis of first LC, the agent requested his bank to issue another LC favoring ultimate supplier, which supplies the goods. So the second LC is issued basis on the security of first LC. Whereas in transfer LC, as we know that there is only one LC issued, which is issued by a buyer favoring to the first beneficiary, and that first beneficiary which request to a bank, which is called as nominated bank, to transfer that LC to the second beneficiary. What actually happened in this? First applicant request his, in back-to-back LC, first applicant request his bank, that is the issuing bank, to issue a LC. After that, issuing bank issued that LC and forward that LC to the advising bank. After that, advising bank will advise that LC to the agent. After that, once the LC is advised with agent, that agent will request nominated bank, or we can say that his bank, advising bank. If there is no nominated bank, then it will request his bank to issue a LC favoring to supplier, or we can say favoring to manufacturer. So this is the process actually happen in back-to-back LC. What actually happened in transfer LC is that applicant requested his bank issuing bank to issue LC. One issuing bank issue LC, that it will forward to the advising bank. That advising bank will forward to that will advise that LC to the beneficiary. One beneficiary has received that, this beneficiary is called as first beneficiary. Whenever this first beneficiary has received the LC, then that will requested the nominated bank, or we can say that the advising bank or transferring bank, to transfer that LC to the second beneficiary. So this is the flow of transfer LC. Now we will differentiate both based on the type of LC it is. Back-to-back LC is, we can say that it's a secondary LC, or we can say that it's a subsidiary LC. Why it is called as secondary or subsidiary LC? Because whenever second LC, which is called as a back-to-back LC, whenever the second LC is issued basis on the security of first LC, then what is this? Is a subsidiary of first LC also. Whenever the second credit is issued basis on the security of first credit, then first credit is called as a primary LC, whereas the secondary credit is called as a secondary LC, or we can say that it's a subsidiary of first LC. So back-to-back LC is a subsidiary of first LC, that is the master LC. Whereas transfer LC is that LC which is called as original LC, or we can say that it's a primary LC. Here only the one LC is issued, which is further transferred to the second beneficiary. So we can say that transfer LC is a primary LC, whereas back-to-back LC is a secondary LC, because it is issued based on the security of another LC, which is a primary LC. So second back-to-back LC is a secondary LC. Now what actually a secondary back-to-back LC is? As we know that back-to-back LC is a secondary LC opened by a bank on behalf of the beneficiary. means the LC which is opened by a bank on behalf of the first beneficiary, or we can say the exporter, against original export LC. Means back-to-back LC is that LC which is opened by a bank on behalf of the exporter. Now, who is this exporter? The exporter is of the first LC. The exporter is that person in whose favor the first LC is issued. This is the first exporter. And now he has requested to issue the back-to-back LC. For the second credit, it will be a importer, which is against the export LC. मतलब जब फर्स्ट LC इशू होता है एजेंट के फेवर में, तो एजेंट क्या हुआ, एक्सपोर्टर हुआ. तो जब एजेंट सेकंड LC इशू करवाता है पहले LC के बेसिस पे, तो जब सेकंड LC इशू होगी और एजेंट इशू करवाएगा, देन एजेंट विल बी कॉल्ड एज अ इम्पोर्टर. तो फर्स्ट LC में एजेंट इज एक्सपोर्टर and in second LC agent is importer. So we can say that in back-to-back LC, in first letter of credit, the agent is a beneficiary. When it requested his bank to issue the back-to-back LC, then in second credit it will be a importer, right? Whereas in transfer LC, as in which the first beneficiary transfer that LC to the second beneficiary, if the credit is stating as transferable, that first beneficiary can transfer the whole part of that credit to the second beneficiary, or it can transfer the part to the second beneficiary, right? Back-to-back LC can also be called as a countervailing credit, whereas transfer LC is called as transmission or assignment LC. Why it is called as transmission or assignment LC? As transfer LC, here what actually happens, here only the first beneficiary requested to transfer that portion or the whole LC to the second beneficiary. So what actually is the first beneficiary is doing? First beneficiary transferring that LC. So means transmission, or we can say that assigning the portion of that credit to that second beneficiary, the specific portion of that LC to the second beneficiary. So it is assignment or transmission. Both can be called as a transfer LC. So transfer LC is also called as transmission or assignment LC, where a certain portion or the whole credit is transferred to the second beneficiary. Whereas in back-to-back LC is called as countervailing credit. Why it is called as countervailing credit? Here because here one LC is issued basis the security of another LC by the same bank. Then it will be called as a counter credit, because here the second credit is issued basis on the first credit is called as counter credit. So who is the issuing authority in back-to-back LC? Back-to-back LC, as we know that it is issued by the agent bank, right? Whenever the back-to-back LC is issued by, then it is known that issuing the back-to-back LC is issued by agent bank. Means agent bank or trader bank is the issuing authority of back-to-back LC, as this LC is issued by agent bank only. Whereas the bank which is transferring that LC under transfer LC, that will be called as transferring bank. So in back-to-back LC, the bank which is issuing the LC is trader bank or agent bank or middleman bank or mediator bank, we can say that. Whereas in transfer LC, the issuing authority is the bank which is transferring that LC to the second beneficiary. So this is all about back-to-back LC and transfer LC. Now we will discuss about domestic trade and international trade. Domestic trade, it can also be called as a national trade, inland trade or domestic trade. There are three names of domestic trade. It can be called as national trade, it can be called as inland trade, whereas international trade can call as foreign trade, or we can say that cross-border trade transaction. Cross-border means beyond the territory of the nation. So there are multiple names of domestic trade as well as for the international trade as well as. So we can say that domestic trade is the national trade or inland trade, whereas international trade is the foreign trade or cross-border trade transaction. Now trading premises. we will discuss. Trading premises states that the premises where the trading happens. Here the trading deals within the territory of a country. Means domestic trade is that trade where the importer and exporter deals within a same country. Means that ट्रेड विद इन द टेरिटरी ऑफ अ कंट्री, यानी कि जब भी इम्पोर्टर और एक्सपोर्टर एक ही जगह पे एक ही देश में रह के डील करते हैं आपस में, दैट इज ट्रेडिंग प्रोमाइसेस. सो वी कैन से दैट the trade within the territory of a country, or we can say that the trade within the premises of a country, or we can say the trade within the boundary of a country is called as domestic trade. Whereas international trade is that trade which is beyond the territory of a country or beyond the boundary of a country, or we can say the beyond the premises of a country, is called as international trade. Now we will differentiate both basis on the nationality, or we can say that a locality. In domestic trade, here both the exporter and the importer are of the same country. In domestic trade, importer and exporter belongs to the same country. Whereas in international trade, the importer and exporter will belong to different country or different nation. Now we will differentiate usance LC with the deferred payment LC. There is only one difference in usance LC and deferred payment LC. Rest all seems to be the same. In usance LC, we need bill of exchange along with the document so that the importer accept the draft and make the payment on a future date. Whereas in deferred payment, there is no need to submit bill of exchange, but here also the importer will make the payment on a future date, or we can say that will make the payment on a predetermined credit period or predetermined basis. Means in usance LC, bill of exchange is a mandatory document which the exporter has to submit along with the rest of the document. So once the exporter submit the bill of exchange, the importer accept that bill of exchange and ensure that he will make the payment on a future dated in usance LC. Whereas in deferred payment LC, there is no need of bill of exchange, but here also the payment will be made on a future date only. So in usance LC and deferred payment LC, there is only one difference. What is that difference? The difference is that in usance LC, there is no requirement of bill of exchange, whereas in deferred payment LC, in usance LC, there is a requirement of bill of exchange, whereas in deferred payment LC, there is no requirement of bill of exchange. Now we will differentiate site LC with the usance LC. Site LC is also called as document against payment, or we can say that payment LC or cash against document. So there were multiple name of site LC, which is called as payment LC, cash against document, or document against payment. Whereas usance LC having multiple names. What are those names? Which can also be called as usance LC. So we can say that usance LC is also called as acceptance LC. It can also be called as time LC. It can also be called as date LC and term LC. So usance LC and site LC having different names. So we must know all these names. Now we will differentiate both basis on the credit extension. As we know that when in site LC, the buyer has to make the payment instantly, or we can say that the buyer has to make the payment immediately once the document were reached at the issuing bank counter. So we can say that if the importer is making the payment on an immediate basis or instantly, so here the importer is not availing any sort of credit extension. Means when he is making the payment on immediate basis, so it means that he is not availing any credit facility. But in usance LC, it is availing credit period. Why it is availing credit period? Because it is accepting the bill of exchange in the usance LC and confirming that he will make the payment on a future date. So from that date which is, and to till the maturity date, from the acceptance date to maturity date, he is availing credit period. So in usance LC he is acceptable and make the payment on future date, but in site LC is accept it make the payment on an immediate basis. So in site LC there is no credit extension, whereas in usance LC credit period is extended to the buyer. Now we will differentiate both basis on the documentation. In site LC, bill of exchange is not required because as the payment is need to be made on site basis. But the BOE, we can say that bill of exchange can be submitted along with the rest of the document, but it's not a necessary document. Exporter can submit the bill of exchange in site LC, but it's not a necessary document in site. But in usance LC, bill of exchange is required. We can say that it's a necessary document where exporter has to submit the BOE, so that once the exporter submits the BOE along with the document, the importer will accept the BOE and make the payment on a future date. So in usance, bill of exchange is mandatory. In site, bill of exchange is not mandatory. Now we will differentiate both on the basis of payment terms. In site LC, issuing bank has to make the payment within 5 days if it is a clean bill. Means whenever the document is received by issuing bank, then it has to make the payment of that bill within 5 days if that LC is clean bill. Means whenever the document is received by issuing bank, then it has to make the payment within 5 days, but there is one condition is that the document need to be clean. Means that the document should be as per the terms and condition of the credit. If document is a clean bill, then it has to make the payment within 5 days, else it can make the payment only after accepting the bill once if it is a discrepant bill. So if it is a clean bill, then issuing bank has to make the payment within 5 days. If it is a discrepant bill, then it will make the payment post acceptance from the issuing bank, the proposed getting acceptance from applicant. So in usance bill, as we know that he has to make the payment on a future dated or predetermined future date. Now we will differentiate with recourse LC with the without recourse LC. As we know that with recourse LC is that LC where the negotiating bank can make the exporter liable if the issuing bank fails to make the payment. Means that in with recourse basis LC, or we can say that in recourse LC, negotiating bank can make the exporter liable. Negotiating bank can make the exporter liable if the exporter has to refund that payment if the issuing bank has failed. Means that if the issuing bank is failed, or we can say that or the applicant fails to make the payment on maturity date, then the negotiating bank can make the exporter liable and get the fund returned from the exporter along with interest. Means with recourse LC is that LC here where the exporter has to refund the payment to the negotiating bank if the issuing bank fails to make the payment. मतलब विद रिकोर्स एलसी वो एलसी होती है कि जब भी नेगोशिएटिंग बैंक ने एक्सपोर्टर का डॉक्यूमेंट परचेज करके उसको एडवांस में पे कर दिया एंड ऑन मेच्योरिटी डेट द इशूइंग बैंक फेल्स, इशूइंग बैंक ने नॉमिनेटेड बैंक को पे नहीं कराया और डिफ़ॉल्ट हो गया, तो इन दैट केस nominated bank can file a claim with exporter to return the money along with that interest. So with recourse LC we can say that it is that LC where the exporter has to return the money to the nominated bank along with interest if the applicant's bank fails to make the payment. Whereas in without recourse basis, the nominated bank, or we can say the negotiating bank, can't make the exporter liable whether the issuing bank whether the issuing bank fails to make the payment or not. So in without recourse basis, the negotiating bank can't make exporter liable. Whether in with recourse basis, exporter can be liable by the nominated bank if issuing bank fails. So in with recourse LC, Negotiating seeks an undertaking from the exporter for refund of paid amount along with the interest portion. Means that whenever there is a LC with recourse, so in that LC, the negotiating bank seeks an undertaking from the exporter, where the exporter confirms that if issuing bank fails to make the payment, then it will return the payment to the negotiating bank along with the interest portion. So basically, negotiating bank seeks an undertaking from the exporter that it will return the money. So अंडरटेक का मतलब होता है कि इस नॉमिनेटेड बैंक अगर विद रिकॉर्स एलसी है, नॉमिनेटेड बैंक क्या करता है कि एक अंडरटेकिंग लेता है एक्सपोर्टर से कि अगर इशूइंग बैंक ने मुझे मैच्योरिटी डेट पे पैसा नहीं दिया तो आप मुझे मेरा सारा पैसा अलॉन्ग विद इंटरेस्ट वापस करोगे. सो ये अंडरटेकिंग एक्सपोर्टर देता है कि अगर इशूइंग बैंक फेल रहेगा तो मैं आपको सारा पैसा आपका वापस कर दूँगा. सो दिस इज द अंडरटेकिंग विच इज रिसीव्ड बाय अ नॉमिनेटेड बैंक फ्रॉम एक्सपोर्टर for refund of payment. Whereas in without recourse LC, nominated bank or negotiating bank does not seek any sort of undertaking from exporter for refund of payment, as the payment terms is on non-recourse basis. Now one thing also we must know, with recourse LC is also called as recourse LC. With recourse LC is also called as recourse LC, and without recourse LC is also called as non-recourse LC, right? So we must know that point. Nature of payment in with recourse LC is that it is the risky type of LC for exporter point of view. Why it is risky for the exporter? Because here exporter submits an undertaking to the negotiating bank that if issuing bank fails, then it will return the whole money along with interest. So it is risky for the exporter, no? Here it is risky for the exporter that he has to return the whole money which he has received from the negotiating bank. Along with that, he has to make the interest portion of that. So it is risky for the exporter. So what exporter will prefer? Then exporter will prefer that the LC must be on a without recourse basis. Means if the issuing bank fails, then it's wholly on the liability of the nominated bank. So how it can recover from that bank? So with recourse LC is the highly risky LC for the exporter point of view. If we discuss on the safest type of LC from exporter point of view, then it is the without recourse LC. Without recourse LC is that LC which is one of the safest type of LC from exporter's point of view. विदाउट रिकोर्स एलसी में जब वो वापस पैसा ले ही नहीं सकता है तो सबसे सेफेस्ट तो एक्सपोर्टर के लिए वही हुआ ना, उसका पैसा कहीं गया ही नहीं. विद रिकोर्स एलसी में एक्सपोर्टर को पैसा भी देना पड़ सकता है तो एक्सपोर्टर के लिए रिस्की हुआ. सो नाउ वन ऑफ द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट विच यू मस्ट रिमेंबर दैट इन विद रिकोर्स एलसी ए कन्फर्म एलसी और अ नेगोशिएबल क्रेडिट इज ऑलवेज ऑन रिकोर्स बेसिस. मतलब जो भी अनकन्फर्म एलसी हैं जिन पे कंफर्मेशन नहीं दिया कंफर्मिंग बैंक ने, वो एलसी और नेगोशिएबल क्रेडिट वो ऑलवेज रिकोर्स बेसिस पे ही रहेंगे. वेरस कंफर्म एलसी जो होता है, जैसा मैंने बताया था थोड़ी देर पहले, कंफर्मिंग बैंक जो भी ऑनर करता है वो विदाउट रिकोर्स होता है. सो वी कैन से दैट कंफर्म एलसी इज ऑलवेज ऑन अ रिकोर्स बेसिस. सो कौन सी एलसी रिकोर्स बेसिस पे होती है? दैट इज अनकन्फर्म एलसी और नेगोशिएबल एलसी. वेरस कौन सी एलसी है जो नॉन रिकोर्स बेसिस पे होती है? दैट इज कन्फर्म्ड एलसी. नाउ वी विल डिस्कस द रेड क्लॉज एलसी विद द ग्रीन क्लॉज एलसी. नाउ व्हाट इज रेड क्लॉज एलसी? We can say that red clause LC is that LC where the exporter avail pre-shipment finance by the issuing bank. Means that in red clause LC जो एक्सपोर्टर होता है उसको एक फाइनेंस मिल जाता है, एक सर्टेन पोर्शन ऑफ LC वैल्यू का एक फाइनेंस मिल जाता है इन एडवांस, सो दैट इट कैन मेक द pre-shipment facility, where it can avail the pre-shipment facility where the exporter receive the advance payment from the issuing bank for utilization or for purchasing raw material, for manufacturing of goods, for packing of goods. So This is the pre-shipment facility which is availed by a exporter from issuing bank. So we can say that red clause LC is that LC where the issuing bank makes a certain portion or certain percentage of the LC value as an advance to the exporter as a pre-shipment finance. So this is called red clause LC. रेड क्लॉज एलसी वो एलसी होता है जिसमें एक्सपोर्टर को इशूइंग बैंक एक सर्टेन पोर्शन या सर्टेन परसेंटेज एडवांस में पे करता है एलसी का, सो दैट वो रॉ मटेरियल परचेज करना हो उसको या फिर गुड्स मैन्युफैक्चर करना हो या गुड्स को पैकिंग करना हो, तो जो भी बिफोर शिपमेंट से पहले एक्टिविटी होती हैं गुड्स की, उसके लिए उसको जो भी फाइनेंस दिया जाता है बाय इशूइंग बैंक, देन दैट एलसी इज कॉल्ड एज रेड क्लॉज एलसी. रेड क्लॉज एलसी और ग्रीन क्लॉज एलसी में बस इतना ही डिफरेंस है कि ग्रीन क्लॉज एलसी इज एन एक्सटेंशन ऑफ रेड क्लॉज एलसी. मीन्स ग्रीन क्लॉज एलसी में क्या होता है, रेड क्लॉज एलसी भी का भी काम होता है और साथ ही साथ उसको स्टोरेज फैसिलिटी भी दिया जाता है. इट मीन्स दैट इन रेड क्लॉज एलसी, इन ग्रीन क्लॉज एलसी, in green clause LC, it exporter already avail the pre-shipment finance as well as along with the pre-shipment finance is avails the warehousing or we can say the storage facility at the departure port or port of origin, we can say that by the issuing bank. Means in red clause LC the exporter avails pre-shipment finance only, but in green clause LC the exporter avails pre-shipment finance as well as warehousing facility also at the port of origin. Right? So red clause LC, we can say that it's an green clause LC is an extension of red clause LC. Means it also contains the feature of red clause LC also, plus it provides the warehousing facility at the origin port. Right? So we can say that red clause LC, in red clause LC the exporter only avails pre-shipment finance, but in green clause LC the exporter avails pre-shipment finance as well as storage facility as well as, or we can say warehousing facility at origin port. So we can say that red clause LC is what? It an advance payment LC where the advance payment is made by the issuing bank to the beneficiary in advance so that it can carried out the activity before the shipment of goods, like purchasing of raw material, manufacturing of goods, packing of goods. These were the pre-shipment activity of the before the goods happen. So red clause LC is an advance payment LC where the exporter avails pre-shipment finance, whereas green clause LC is an extension of red clause LC where the exporter avails the pre-shipment finance as well as the warehousing facility as well. Now in red clause LC we can see, as we are seeing this, that the red clause LC is equal to the advance pre-shipment finance facility. As we have mentioned, we have discussed earlier, the red clause LC is the advance pre-shipment facility received by the exporter, whereas green clause LC is, we can see this, red clause LC plus warehousing or storage facility. As we have mentioned, the green clause LC is what is red clause LC plus, or we can say that along with red clause LC it provides warehousing facility or storage facility. How the name is derived? How the red clause name is derived? Red clause LC is basically typed in red ink or it is highlighted in red because here the advance payment is being made by the issuing bank. So it is typed in red ink. So that's why the name is called as red clause LC. Whereas green clause LC is typed in green ink because here the exporter will pre-shipment finance as well as storage facility. So it is highlighted in green. So that's why it is called as green clause LC. Now we will differentiate both based on the proportion of advance. Basically in red clause LC, the proportion of advance is made available to the beneficiary is the range between the 20 to 25%. Means in red clause LC, the exporter avails 20 to 25% of the LC value as an advance for carrying out pre-shipment activity. Means in red clause LC, the exporter avails pre-shipment finance, or we can say it avails advance payment. So advance payment for what portion? It avails advance payment of 20 to 25% of the LC value. Whereas in green clause LC, the exporter avail advance portion of range between 75 to 80%. Means the value of LC here, suppose whatever the value of LC is, so here the exporter avails 75% to 80% of that LC in advance. In green clause LC, the exporter avails 75 to 80% of the LC value in advance. Now we will discuss who prefer red clause LC and who prefer green clause LC. Red clause LC basically is favorable for the exporter because here the exporter avail pre-shipment finance without confirming any sort of warehousing facility, because in red clause LC the exporter avail pre-shipment finance, so that exporter can use that finance for any purpose. It can use for the manufacturing of goods, it can use for any other purpose other than LC. So exporter prefer red clause LC where he avails finance, whereas in green clause LC it is favorable for buyer. Why it is favorable for buyer? Because in green clause LC the buyer is extended financing facility to the exporter through his bank against the goods which is already warehoused. Means those goods which are about to ship, so he is providing finance facility to the exporter against on that goods only which is already warehoused and it is about to shipped. Means green clause LC, here in green clause LC the exporter provide finance facility, the importer provide finance facility to the exporter against those goods which are already manufactured or about to ship. मतलब ये फेवरेबल बायर के लिए इसलिए होता है क्योंकि बायर जो उसमें ऑलरेडी एडवांस में पेमेंट कर रहा है एक्सपोर्टर को, वो सिर्फ उन्हीं के अगेंस्ट कर रहा है, उन गुड्स के अगेंस्ट कर रहा है जो ऑलरेडी मैन्युफैक्चर हो चुके हैं और वेयर हाउस में जाकर रख चुके हैं, और वो ऑलरेडी दैट इज़ फॉर अबाउट टू रेडी टू शिप। तो वो जो ऑलरेडी गुड्स शिप होने के लिए तैयार हैं उनके अगेंस्ट वो क्रेडिट फैसिलिटी दे रहा है, तो उसको ये भरोसा है कि मेरा गुड्स के अगेंस्ट में पेमेंट कर रहा हूँ. बट इन रेड क्लॉज LC is making advance payment, so it is not confirmed whether that exporter will utilize that payment toward that shipment of that goods or not. Or so this is the favorable portion we will discuss in this. Now we will discuss what are the documentation required under red clause LC. There was less number of document required in red clause LC, as here only the exporter will pre-shipment finance, whereas in green clause LC the exporter will pre-shipment finance as well as warehousing facility, so he has to provide more documentation as a proof of warehousing facility as well as proof of the so that a exporter will get the payment to 70 to 75 or to 80% of the LC value. So here the exporter need to submit more documentation so that the red clause LC is converted to green clause LC. So here he also submit the documentation of title, undertaking, receipt and multiple documents we are requiring green clause LC. So this is all about our topic. Hope you will like it. If you like the video, to hit on a like button and do subscribe my channel. Thanks for watching. Thank you.